Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Maurice Stinnett, and I am proud to serve as the Global Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Warner Music Group. Now, family, I could not be more thrilled to be here to kick off our first event on women in the music industry from WMG's Global DEI Institute. I'm also grateful to have our DEI Institute faculty member, Dr. Roxane Gay, here to host this amazing conversation. Now, you should know, Dr. Gay is the New York Times best-selling author of Hunger and Bad Feminists, along with many other books. She's a professor, editor, advice columnist, and more. In fact, she has a podcast, The Roxane Gay Agenda. She has a publishing imprint, Roxane Gay Books, and is also at work on a film and television project. In short, she does it all. Family, I'm also excited to welcome two of Warner Music Group's own artists, Hayley Kiyoko and Noelle Scaggs, to hear more about their journeys and experiences within the music industry. And like Dr. Gay, they do it all. So family, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gay to kick off this amazing conversation. Dr. Gay?
Hi, everyone. It's Roxane Gay, and I'm here today in conversation with Hayley Kiyoko and Noelle Scaggs. And we're going to be talking about what it means to be women in the entertainment industry. And so, Noelle and Hayley, please introduce yourselves.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I love it. Okay, I'm Hayley Kiyoko. I am an artist, director, and I'm with Atlantic Records, and so excited to be speaking with both of you. Huge fans.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Noelle Scaggs. I am the co-lead vocalist of Fits and the Tantrums, also a singer, songwriter, founder of an organization called Diversify the Stage. And I'm happy to be here as well. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I'm also in the Warner Music family, but as an Electra artist.
Yes, it is a very big umbrella. I am learning just how big, and I had no idea all these labels were under the Warner banner, but now I know. So I have a question I love to ask all creative people, and both of you have been in the entertainment industry for quite some time. And so when did you first know you were creative?
I guess I'll go first. I started writing music. My parents had this piano in the living room, and I found myself spending a lot of time alone and trying to find ways to comfort myself. I was struggling with my sexuality since I was 5. And so I found music. I would play on the piano and sing songs to myself and write songs about love, even though I had never experienced love before. And I fell in love with drums and percussion. And so I just fell in love with music. It was such a support system for me at such an early age. And that was the beginning of many adventures.
I love that. I have that kind of shared experience of spending a lot of time alone, more in the picture of I was always kind of a shy kid, but I was also a kid that other kids like to bully often. And it just, trying to adjust with different types of personalities and finding my own identity in that space. Music was really kind of a salvation for me and discovery, listening to a lot of records when I would come home after school and writing down every single lyric to every single song that I loved and just kind of like singing along with different artists. And, I felt for me, it was kind of a refuge from, my experiences in like elementary and junior high school and really kind of finding my own voice. And it gave me a lot of courage, performing as well. Like I allow myself to, participate in talent shows at the school. Mm-hmm. And, it really kind of gave me an opportunity to shine my light in a different way and kind of, expose people to a different side of me than whatever their perception was, So yeah, I think around then, that was the time that I really kind of discovered that I loved being a performer it wasn't until my later years that I realized that, the artistry was a possibility.
So how do you find the courage to perform, to go and make yourself vulnerable in that way in front of an audience? Because every time I see it and every time I do it, I always think I want to die. So how
Same.
do you find that courage? And if it's not courage, what makes you do it? What makes you do it despite being terrified anyway?
I mean, I really relate to. Oh, go ahead, Noelle.
No, go. No, sorry. No, fine. You're fine. Keep moving.
I was just going to say that I relate. I really what you shared about your story really resonated with me because, doing talent shows and involving myself with any kind of opportunity to be on stage and to perform, feeling like an outcast, like being on stage, even though it was a very vulnerable experience every time. And I would be lying for everyone if every performer was just not scared and didn't feel vulnerable. But you go through that process. And for me specifically, because when you get on that stage and you get to truly be who you are, and you're not, it's weird because it's vulnerable, but yet for me, you don't feel judged and you're able to feel like accepted and validated for who you are. Because when you're off the stage and you're not expressing yourself, there's a huge, your differences and your otherness really shine. So performing and having that outlet, that artistic outlet, for me really brought myself closer to who I truly was, and also just gave me that confidence to slowly lift my head a little bit higher every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it, for me, it really helped. I guess the women in my family really, instilled that in me. They were the just do it people, so even in those situations where I would be the most nervous, or can I actually even really do this? I don't know, something just would always kind of snap in me to just go for it. It's, oh, this sounds like it would be fun, right? So I always took it as more, I want to have a good time. Like, I want to have that experience of just doing something and not, prohibiting myself from trying. And I think the women in my family really kind of practice that in their everyday, and, just kind of laid into me internally, maybe in a, at that age, maybe in an unconscious way, kind of really provoked me to do those kinds of things, to take those types of risk. And it's just followed me throughout my career to just go for it if it felt good,
That's amazing. So Noelle, you mentioned finding your voice. And I think for a lot of artists, that's the first thing we try to do creatively, is figure out, who am I? What do I want to sound like? What do I want to say? And so who were some of your creative influences as you tried to figure out your voice and go on that journey?
I listened when I was coming up, I was listening to a lot of different artists, like I had access to a lot of music, specifically because of my father's record collection and the ability to just kind of play things when I wanted. And music was a really big part of my family environment. Like, we were always doing family events, and music was such a big part of that experience. Like, we couldn't do a family, occasion without pumping the speakers, and it was like a block party, so things like that. So I was listening to artists like Tina Marie, women like that. I was listening to Aretha Franklin. Obviously, I was listening to the Temptations. I was listening to like the Spinners, and I had, my aunt's collection of music as well. When I started getting into the high school years, I was listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Dinah Washington and Roberta Flack, and like just all of these really incredible, singers and vocalists that had a very different way of telling their story on record, and really listening to those lyrics. And I think it really kind of helped me shape my ability to, write a song, to like identify lyrics and poetry in a way that was very true and honest to my experience. And I'm also a big observer, so I was always really able to kind of take what I was seeing and put it on paper, and then try to formulate a song through that process. I think a lot of my identity is really based upon what is happening in my present moment and what I'm kind of observing throughout the world, and how I move through that, like how I move through, even now, if we're thinking about all the things that have happened in the last like 2 years, like me trying to formulate what I've been able to experience through this process of really truly being alone, because we were all forced to be, right? And then like growing into that experience, and really finding my voice as just a human being outside of music, outside of being the creator. Like, what does this person really look like? And now going into a new record cycle and trying to write that down in a space, because I decided not to do any writing during the pandemic. I think I wrote like 4 songs through the entire process, because I was still really processing what I was feeling about what was happening to the rest of the world and me within it, So my identity is always really shaped by that storytelling. Like, how can I visually, how can I put what I'm seeing visually and interpret it on paper, and really have that story be reflected, can I, somebody else identifying with my walk right now, you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. So I think for me, just trying to figure out what my voice is, it's constantly changing, because my everyday is so different. It's like I may have one day where I'm feeling really freaking sad and alone and really bad about being alone in this space. And then the next day I realize what a strength that is, what a power that is to, have that and really walk my own path. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to explain it. I would in a song.
Yes.
Definitely in a song. Yes.
And that's what's so interesting about creativity, is the things that we can't necessarily express in conversation can sometimes come out through our art. Hayley, what about you? I know that you too had parents in the entertainment industry, and so you have always been around creativity. How did you start to develop your voice?
Well, my mom is an ice skating choreographer, and my dad was a stand-up comedian. And so a lot of the times my mom was working, and she would bring us all, my brother and sister, to an ice rink. And I'd be surrounded by these huge warehouses of costumes and glitter and massive like stages and sets and props. And I think at a young age, it taught me to dream big and to think what is possible. Like, it could be even bigger. And it's like a blessing and a curse, because it made me an extreme perfectionist. It made me a crazy dreamer. And it's great, and also can be, kind of challenging when you're trying to navigate the realities of just your opportunities and your ability to express yourself and to create. But yeah, I was surrounded in an artistic household, and I think that obviously that's why I fell in love with songwriting. And I grew up listening to like Stevie Wonder and Fiona Apple, and just very like visual songwriters, which I loved, that kind of created these worlds and these stories. And again, like being queer at a very young age, knowing that I was biracial and I wasn't white enough and I wasn't Asian enough and I didn't really fit anywhere, I was always trying to create a story, or I was always trying to create another world that I could be in. And I think that that's really what kind of hooked me initially through music. And then obviously that's continued to evolve into directing music videos and wanting to create these worlds that can allow a safe space for anyone who needs it.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned something that's really interesting to me, that having this sort of outside sense of ambition and possibility always has to be negotiated with the realities of the industries that you are a part of. And so for both of you, how do you guys navigate that difference between what you want for yourself, what you know you're capable of, and the limits of the imagination of the industry that you're a part of?
Oh,
it's a great question.
I'm like,
it's a great question. I'm navigating that every day. I mean, even like music videos are a great example for me. You know, when I write a song and I dream of this incredible music video, and then I have this amount, you know, this amount of money to do something with it. And it's like, okay, how do you spend $1 20 different ways? And how do you flip it on its head? And how do you present it in a new way? And for me, that's kind of how I became a director, because I couldn't afford a director to execute my visions. And so I had to figure out how to do it myself and reimagine, okay, the song was about this, but I only can afford to do that. How can I connect that and have it be my story still? And how can I reimagine this story? And so it's ended up, the limitations, so to speak, has created a very creative environment, because it's challenged me time and time again of like, but you could do it this way and you can do it this way. And how can you do it in this small box, you know, and then having to do that over and over and over again. And so it can be an exhausting journey and experience, but it's always creative. And I think as an artist, we love challenges and we love finding new ways and new mediums to express ourselves. And I think that's why I continue to do what I do, and it keeps me going and keeps me interested. The hardships keep me interested, I guess.
That's interesting. I love that the hardships aren't a deterrent necessarily. They're more a motivation.
Yeah.
What about you, Noelle?
I think mine, you know, because I'm in a band, right? I'm in a band with 5 other people, you know, two of us being more of the front and center folks. It's and always a shared experience. So it's not anything that's necessarily just my vision or my goal. It's definitely a lot of compromise that has to go into what is, you know, portrayed, not only just within the band, but also looking at the label and, you know, what the label is looking for and what they need. And, you know, like there's always this kind of like fine dance that you're trying to do and achieving your vision, but also needing to kind of navigate that you're not going to get 100% of what you want in any situation, you know? So it's like you fight for the things that are the most important and you let the other things go. You know, it's like a constant battle of, you know, you needing to check your ego at the door and recognizing that it's not just you, you know, it's if I were a solo artist, it'd be a completely different picture, but I'd still be dealing with what the label needs, right? And finding that balance. And I think for a lot of artists that are in situations where we are in, you know, our business is fronted by, you know, a record label or, you know, folks that are distributing your projects and thinking about it in that business sense, there's always that kind of like fine line of your ability to create exactly what it is you want, right? And then yes, finances are always a play. And anything that you're doing, you know, it just really depends on the size budget that you're able to have to really make those things come true. But yeah, my experience has always been I've had to navigate knowing that I could come with an idea that everybody thinks is great, but there's always going to be additional input and additional, you know, vision and things that you kind of have to compromise in.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up this idea of collectivity and being part of a band, because we tend to think of musicians as these lone wolves who I have a vision and I'm going to enact it. And now you have to actually share that vision with the rest of your band members. And you're the only Black woman in your band, which I am sure comes with its own set of challenges, because oftentimes when you're the only Black woman in a group, you're also the only Black woman in decision-making rooms. And so what kinds of insights and challenges has that given you over the course of your career?
It's been interesting because I think I've been really lucky with the people that I've been creatively involved with. So even from like my first band, we were all shades, you know, we had Peruvians, we had people that identified as white. I was always the only woman, right? You know, and that first project, I wasn't the only Black identifying person in that band. This one is very different, right? So, what I've loved about Fits and the Tantrums is that the walk is about who we are as artists and our ability to show up and kill it every single time, and that's what we've really engaged in. I've had my experiences with the negativity that comes with being a Black woman or any Black person in any, kind of genre, especially when I'm looking at the alternative realm where, yeah, I've dealt with racism, but it's been hidden from me. Like my team has hidden it from me. Like if there were negative comments that were placed on our YouTube channels or, you know what I'm saying? Just random things, I haven't been as exposed to it, and it could be said that maybe, being able to see that and see the world for what it is, it takes off that rose colored glass, right? And allows you to really, commit to making sure that people know that it's not okay, right? There's always that challenge of what PR says is don't engage. And I'm not a person that does not engage,
Neither am I.
I'm very much known for not caring, and about that line. And I'm okay with losing a fan. I'm okay with people not buying our records that do not, that are not just in my energy alignment. I'm okay with that, but yeah, I would say within the band itself, it's always been about my ability to show up. I'm a badass performer. I know that, I've really grown into that in my career and stuff. But I've been very fortunate that the folks that I've been engaged with creatively, I haven't had that issue. They let me be 1,000% me all the time.
Which I'm sure is incredibly gratifying. I think that's what we all search for, is that ability to be ourselves and also do what we love. So Hayley, I saw you nodding when Noelle was talking about how she's not a person who won't engage. And so I'm sure you receive quite a lot of feedback. You're an out queer performer. And even though progress has been made, there aren't actually that many out performers. So how do you handle engaging with the feedback, both positive and less than positive, and sometimes just homophobic or racist, that you receive?
I'm nodding because it's hard. I think you have to hold your head high, and so it's hard not to engage with people, because I think for me, I'm always wanting to try to find a common ground with people, but unfortunately there are a lot of people in the world that you just, like Noelle said, your energy just don't align, and agree to disagree. Thank you so much. So but yeah, it's challenging to navigate. I know, like, my very first tour was really hard because it was just my first time performing and going to more conservative states, and knowing that, my fans needed me there and that they lived there, but just being there and like being on guard and like knowing that, I was a very out and proud queer woman of color, and like what that was going to look like as I navigated touring the country and then going overseas. And so I feel like overall it's been a very positive thing. I think I do not regret being very out and proud whatsoever. I've been able to find my community by being my true self, which is hilarious because I spent most of my life trying to get rid of it. And so it's funny how life works like that. But I'm very grateful for the fan base and people that I've found. And I think it can be frustrating sometimes because I think that we need representation in every avenue of artistry, and we need more. And we don't just need one token film. We don't just need one token. Like, we need everyone to be themselves and to help kind of move the needle forward. And so it can be hard sometimes, navigating the hate or, the comments. And like Noelle said, like sometimes you just have to like not look at those comments as well, to preserve your like mental well-being. But, there's been a lot of progress. And then you have, the Don't Say Gay bill. You're taking like 4 steps back, and we're attacking trans youth once again. And it's just like, it's challenging because we get so much progress. And then a lot of times it feels like we're taking 10 steps back, and then we get 1 step forward, and then we get 10 steps back. And so the positive thing is that I feel like it really unites my community to continue to fight for our rights and our existence. And we're not going anywhere. So
absolutely. Speaking of your community, yesterday and actually several times this week, I was watching the Girls Like Girls video.
Oh, thank you.
I loved the song, and I especially loved the video because it takes quite a turn. Like there's a journey that happens over the course of that video. And I found it incredibly cathartic that there's this moment of standing up for oneself and standing in her truth. And so what was it like to bring that sort of song into the pop canon, and then also direct that video yourself? Because as a control freak myself, I always love, and Noelle, I'm going to ask you about control as well. Like I love when women take control of their creative projects to like enact the vision that they have without the interference of others. So what was it like to bring that song into the pop canon and then be able to direct the video in the way you wanted?
It was a terrifying moment for me. I'll always remember it. I went into a writing session not knowing what song I was going to write. And then I ended up coming out to my co-writers in that moment, was not planning on that. And then we got Girls Like Girls from it. And so it was a very vulnerable experience for me, from writing the song, sharing it with my team, and then going, do I want to out myself? And so I put the song on last minute on my EP, This Side of Paradise. It was a very just like, oh, I'm going to throw it on. And then it was like, I wanted to do a visual for it. Again, didn't have the resources. I had $5,000 left. I was like, I either get a remix or I do a video. And so I pulled every favor that I had. I connected with Austin Winchell, who I went to high school with, and he helped me bring the team together. And it was so interesting because when I released that video, I was terrified. And yet it was like the best experience of my life, because I released it, and week by week, the views would go up. I think I had 9,000 subscribers on YouTube at that time. And so for me to get 1 million views on a video was like insane. And then it went up and up and up. And now it's at 143 million plus views. And I think my creative process for that video was, obviously I wanted to tell a story that was hopeful, and a story that I necessarily didn't get. And I wanted to give that to other people. And obviously, as you watch the video, there's the turn, and you see the lead actress standing up for herself, and there is some violence in it. But for me, it was very metaphorical of just really standing up for yourself and standing up for who you are. And, the guy in the video represents society and your parents or your friends that don't understand you, and just really fighting for yourself. And I feel like that takes a lot of energy and maturity and time for us to do that as women, especially. And I'm really glad that it resonated with you and that you liked the video.
It did. And I think in large part because of that metaphorical moment where this guy just gets his ass kicked in exactly the way he deserves. I think so often we don't have that opportunity to defend ourselves and to protect ourselves, even with words, especially with words, because few of us in life are really ever going to turn to violence, and nor should we. But I think a lot of us do want to always have that moment where we're like, we stand our ground and we stand up for ourselves. And to see it play out, especially with 2 young women, it's great. It's like, yes, fuck him up, which is like what I shouted.
Yeah, it's a finally moment,
Yes.
Yeah. So
Noelle, I know that creative control is important to most artists, especially given the history of control in this industry, where in general the studios had all the power and artists had to work within that system. And so, how does control manifest itself in your career, and what steps do you take to protect your creative control, especially, yeah, as in when you are doing your songwriting and other individual activities?
I think it's being very clear about where I stand with things. So it's, when I mentioned like really kind of picking my battles, so to speak, like if I'm very passionate about something, I really let it be known, amongst my team. And even with fits, sometimes we don't always agree about a direction, but when I feel something like to my core, and I know that if we did it this way, it would be exactly what everybody wanted it to be. I do fight for it, and other times I'm kind of cool with just like, stepping back and letting it play out. I've, always been very adamant about the songs and how we relay our messaging, and even just like the sound and the contributions and the writers that we work with, and things like that. I've always Fitz has always really allowed me to kind of have my piece in that. And when we're writing together, we're able to kind of really, again, do that dance where we get the best result at the end of the day, and it's nice to have that balance, because Fitz can also really push me. It's really easy for any artist to kind of get locked in an idea or in a box, right? And sometimes it takes that outside looking in to, hey, try it this way and see where we go. And I can do the same thing for him. It's like we can be creatures of habit sometimes, him so more than I, and I'm always looking to kind of push the agenda in a different direction, and, and bring it together somehow. And I think that's where really my control often is. It's like, we've done this already. Like, I'd like to do something different, like I'd like to move it into the, into a different direction. This was something that, I think really shined through on our earlier records with More Than Just a Dream. When we were going through the process of the music video creation, we did the song, oh my God, why am I blanking on one of our songs? It was our third single, and I really wanted to make sure that the band wasn't in the video, because it would have been the first time that we actually weren't, in the video. And I always loved that approach for different artists that I came up, listening to, like Radiohead, like they would have like a cameo moment, but the visual was through a different person, and that storytelling shined through a different actor and things like that. So I really wanted to try something like that, and they were very open to it. Another time it happened was with a project that we did for our song Place for Us, that was on our self-titled record. And I wanted to get with real people and really bring in this fine line of a common experience. What is it to you that, that's important to you? That was like the main question. What is important to you in either, in your own journey for the world, like all of these different things. And we pulled all of these different people together, some friends of mine, some strangers, and we created this really important project that I thought really, showed the commonality that we have. A lot of the experiences, a lot of the answers we got were very similar. They were just spoken in a different way. And those are the kinds of things I love to do, when they allow me to kind of have that, that type of storytelling and the labels fully into it, I'm happy.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting to find that, and we don't talk about this enough, I think, that people generally have more in common than not. And we focus on the differences as if difference is the only thing that exists. And I actually think difference should be celebrated. I think it's a source of strength. But the deeper I get into my writing career and the kinds of people who connect to my work, I'm often shocked. I'm like, wait, you felt a connection to that book? Because that wasn't about you at all. But it turns out it was actually about that person in a way I would have never known if they hadn't shared that with me. So how do you find... Well, no, let me ask this question. I know that a lot of times there isn't enough diversity in the work that we do and with the people we work with. And I know that in 2020, you launched Diversify the Stage. So you had a busy year in 2020. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about what that initiative is and what you hope to accomplish. What kind of absence are you trying to fill with it?
Yeah, I mean, when I started Diversify the Stage, prior to even getting to that point, I think I was really questioning my experience within the industry of always being the only Black woman within my space, right? Or not really meeting a lot of folks that were, Black women or persons of color, especially behind the scenes. It started, I started to kind of question like, well, how are people being found? Like, how are we even finding our teams? Like, is Aaron just not meeting people that, kind of like walk the same path? Like, I just started asking a few questions. And I remember the first, I think instance of me actually asking was Fitz. I was like, have you noticed that we've never hired a woman of color on the team? Or our experience has always been women, but it's never been women of color that identify as women of color. And not to say that was like the most important thing, but it just made me wonder. And then as that wonder happened, I started to notice that it was not just my band. It was other bands. It was, it was either a whole lot of men behind the scenes, if we were looking at stagehand and crews and things like that. And I was like, why is this the norm? So as the pandemic went on and all of the things had happened, and I was constantly seeing people that looked like me shot in the streets by people that are supposed to be protecting the community and all of these things, I started to take it personal. And I'm not a big advocate of lip service when it comes to community social impact work, right? I'm not into companies that use a moment and then do nothing about it on the back end. So I was watching a lot of the black boxes. I was watching a lot of, it's like people trying to figure out what to say in a situation where you're trying to wrap your head around yourself and maybe what you're contributing to this society unconsciously, right? So it's like everybody doing what they can. But within the music industry, it was always like, we're going to keep talking about the Grammys and we're going to keep talking about the disinclusion of X, Y, and Z when it comes to these particular spaces. But no one's talking about what we make our bread and butter on, which is 90% of our income really now, because nobody's buying records, or they kind of are, but not the way that they used to when I was, really coming up in the industry. And nobody's talking about the lack of diversity behind the scenes. Or at least like it's not, in the forefront of the conversation, right? Because these are throwaway jobs to some people. These are not as recognizable. A lot of people don't know about, what's happening in the technical space of production work. A lot of people don't know what makes the cart go when we're on a tour bus, like who's running things, right? So I needed to start educating myself on the why. Like, what is the obstacle? Why is this so normal? Is it only because I'm in the alternative, world or closer to pop? Like, is this like a shared thing just for our space? You know what I'm saying? Because like when we're going into any other genre, when we're looking at where it's predominantly Black music, right? Hip hop and all these things, it changes. But when those artists get bigger, their crews change and the companies that they work with change and the diversity gets less and less and less, So I wanted to kind of dive into that. And as I dove in and I asked more questions, I realized that there needed to be actual work from an artist standpoint to talk about the issues behind the scenes and maybe bring more light to it, you know? So that's initially how Diversify the Stage started. And the whole intention behind it is to shine a light on these career paths that are not known widely, you know, especially when we're looking at the Black community or just in arts period, because unless you're in theater, you're not learning about stagehand production jobs. That's not happening. Everything's based upon creative performance, who's on the stage, who the spotlight is shining on, but not necessarily about the people behind the scenes that are really making our tours function and contributing to our success on the road. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to create the opportunity for folks to learn more about the music industry that they are not familiar with. And hopefully in that, encourage people to explore these jobs while they're in school or they're trying to identify, you know, where they want to go. And in that, start to reshape the pool, the shallow pool, apparently, that is contributing to this. And then also looking at activating something that's a little bit more central. You know, it's like we don't have HR in our touring communities. You know, we don't have, you know, everyday trainings for sexual harassment training. We do not have, you know, all of these things. There's touring, you know, entities that are now really thinking about that, but there's no DEI training. There's no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, none of this is like something that you see in the corporate infrastructure. It's the wild, wild west. We have 1099 employees. This is how we function. And, you know, I want to utilize the space for Diversify the Stage to really talk about that. And if anything, the last thing I'm able to do with this is just plant the seed in people's minds that it is possible to create this within this industry and that it needs to happen. It needs to be a part of our experience. It needs to be a part of our experience as artists, because I'm sick of being the only one. I'm sick of looking around and not having anybody that I'm like, I can look at and they know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the look, right?
Every room I go into where I'm the only Black woman, and then eventually either they'll bring me a Black person, like, here, look, we do have like this one Black employee. And she'll look at it, she's like, this is not my job. But we'll still have this moment. And it can be actually really exhausting. I'm always grateful for the opportunities that I have, but then it just breaks my heart that I'm the only person there. And that even behind the scenes, no one that looks like me that might begin to understand any aspect of my experience is there. And then I have to translate my experience to generally a lot of older white men who are like, I remember once I was pitching a movie and this exec said, why should I care about this? And so I told him, but not nicely. And, you know, it's like, how do we reduce those moments? So Hayley, do you find that you are often the only one in the room, or the only woman of color, the only queer woman in the room? And how do you handle that?
Well, I just want to say really quickly, Noelle, I'm so thankful that you're shining a light on this issue, because I'm very aware of this issue. And I've had many conversations of like, how do we change this? Where is the starting point of changing this? Because from engineers to technicians to lighting, it's normally white men. And it's like, we want it to change, but how and where do you find those people? And it starts from education, starts from the very beginning. And so thank you for doing that, because I'm totally for it. And it's something that we really need in our industry, and it's a big issue. But yeah, I think for me, I've always just felt other, and luckily I've surrounded myself with a very amazing, diverse group of incredible people, and specifically women. I love working with women. I love women for many reasons. So I'm like very all about women. And so I try to work. I mean, like, for example, it was so crazy that one of my, I did a music video last year for the song I released, Chance. And it was the first time I had a female DP. And I had to work so hard to find them. and to
Yes.
make that a moment. And it was just like, oh yeah, this is what it's supposed to be. And just the collaboration, and we were just on the same page. I was like, oh my gosh, if only like all my other work situations felt more like this, like what the possibilities could be and how empowered I could feel. And it was just the most incredible experience. And but it was crazy that it took so long to be able to have that opportunity. But yeah, I think I'm very aware of the fact that especially in the music industry, it's predominantly male driven. And that's, within on screen and definitely behind cameras. And we're talking about mixing, we're talking about mastering, we're talking about just engineers in the studio. Like women need to have that opportunity, and we have to also empower one another to do so. Because I remember for me as a director, I wasn't empowered. I was like, I can't direct. I don't know how to do that. I've been directing my whole life. And it took one of my friends who was a woman in the industry, who was a production designer, being like, you are a director. You can do this. What are you talking about? It was just as simple as that. And I was like, oh yeah, like, and it's about empowering each other, because she empowered me to be like, hey, like, you've had this power within you your whole life. Go do it. What's stopping you? And so I think that that's like, hopefully will be the beginning of change, of having these conversations, of empowering one another, of like, become an engineer, become a technician, and chasing those dreams and supporting each other within that. Because having a community and having someone believe in you, like, I think that that's like the most powerful, amazing gift you could give to anyone, is to just believe in somebody and believe in their ability to succeed. And we need more of that. And it's as simple as that can help someone go to that college or chase that dream or take that internship, is having that belief with it for one another.
Now, Hayley, I know that representation is something that you think about and talk about quite a lot. And recently on Twitter, you were talking about always having to remind studio execs and producers about the range of queer narratives that we deserve, and how you're often told, oh, it's 2022, we've kind of like solved this problem. And I think anyone who's queer or marginalized in any way knows like it's 2022 and it might as well be 1952.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're laughing out of fear and such.
Right? So how do you think your work pushes those boundaries, and how do you how do you try to hold the industry accountable in the ways that you can to increase representation and to broaden representation? Because all too often, and I think, Noelle, you probably deal with this as well, people think, oh, if there's one, that's representation, as if our cultures are monolithic, and all it does take is one. When we all know we contain multitudes. So how do you hold them accountable and try to push change?
I mean, it's a very challenging question. I'm trying to figure that out as I navigate the industry. I think that, what I had tweeted is my everyday general meetings with people, and not understanding how important it is to broaden queer narratives. And we don't just need trauma-based focused queer narratives, and we don't just need narratives that don't focus on any of the issues or trauma or struggles. We need everything else in between. And where is that? And let me direct that, give me that opportunity. And so, that is one fight I'm fighting, and trying to have those conversations with people. And I think the other side of it is, the best thing that I can do and others can do is to just not give up. Like, I think, as frustrated as I get at times, it's like I have to continue to create and continue to, even if it's short form, however I can normalize these queer narratives. I mean, we're so unique, and there's so many stories to be told. And our society, like, we have to reflect our society as a whole, not just here you get X, Y, and Z, and that's it, and find your bucket, and there you go. And you're validated, your experience is validated. And it really comes from the industry. And, I grew up with all the fears that I had, mainly because of the lack of representation in TV and film and music. And so like, if I had that representation, it would have made life easier. It doesn't solve your problems, but it comforts you and helps you survive. And the issue for me is like, it really starts with Hollywood. It starts with what we're seeing on the screen and like how our stories are being told and the hope that we're hoping to find as a young lost adolescent. You're trying to, if your family doesn't support you or your friends don't understand you, or you live in a town and you're other, it's like you're looking for someone to validate your existence and be like, hey, keep going, you deserve to be here. And like, that's what art's about. And so why is it so hard to make this happen? Like, why is it just baby steps? Like, let's help each other. I mean, the world is hurting and we need to help each other. We need to find peace and love one another. And a big part of that is showing and having that reflect in, the industry.
Yeah. And the cultural products that we make. Noelle, you mentioned this earlier, and I know you've also talked about it elsewhere, that right now, artists and creators make the majority of their income on the road and touring through concerts and, streaming is also in the news quite a lot because of the royalty structure that is pretty horrific. And so what do you think, and this is a big question for which it's not your problem to solve, but what can streaming companies do to be better and to be more equitable? And what are some of the other most pressing issues that you think need to be addressed right now in the music industry?
Oh man, so I remember when the record stores started to close, and how that shift in culture of instant success in finding music was put into the forefront, right? So obviously the culture changed, and going to a record store to find something, because you had to really work for that. You had to work for that moment to happen, to increase your catalog as a music listener. You had to show up somewhere. You had to buy the album. You had to listen to it. You had to actually contribute time, right? So as things have become more rapid and instant gratification, and that's just the culture of music listening, that's just the culture of our experience. In any case, how often do you pick up the phone to have your groceries delivered versus actually going to the grocery store now, right? So that whole culture has changed. And I think with that, it diminished the respect for the creators that are spending the time on creating this music, right? Unless you are a true fan and you're always going to buy the album, right? You're not just listening passively. You're not just listening to playlists, and maybe you stumble upon something and you dig a little bit deeper. You now have to bring the idea of finding an artist and the importance of really digging into a catalog back into your marketing. Right now, I feel like instant this, playlist that is on the forefront of marketing, period, from Spotify to Apple to all of these things. It's following that trend, but it's devalued music. There's no value in music. Listen to half of the records that are coming out. How much value is actually even in the sound, because you can so quickly make a record nowadays. And often people are not thinking about that, or they don't have the money, right? They don't have the money to really create the sonics that I was used to coming up, right? Because you don't have the engineers. A lot of the studios have closed down. It's so expensive to get in a mixer in some cases. You can have a record mastered for $300. You know what I mean? And it's basically condensing the sound for this digital quality that we have in the world today. So I come from a very different generation of music and all of these things, but I've watched the culture shift. And I think that if there was some importance put back into the effort of actually finding an artist and listening to the full body of work, again, I think that would be really helpful to, to this generation and understanding the work and time that an artist puts into creating that album, and maybe the value will be important for them to support. And maybe we can begin to have a balance, because right now it's so unbalanced that we as artists have to rely upon the Spotifys. We can't just pull our records, because then how are we getting heard? There's no record stores, or the few that remain may not even carry your album, because they can only support so many artists. There's thousands of us, millions of us, thousands of us, millions of us in the world that are contributing to music. And I'm not trying to take away the beauty and the establishment right now, but I feel like there needs to be some balance, and there needs to be a respect from these tech companies about the art, because that's not there anymore. Right now, I just feel like it's like we are a passive commodity.
Yeah, and it seems like I agree. And it's hard to figure out, how do you get people to care about the artistry and the effort? And it does take a lot of work to make creative things. And I think the internet makes everything creative seem easy. There's TikTok, but even those TikTok videos, like, people don't realize, like, there's production, there are cameras and lights, and then they edit. Like, those kids are actually doing film work in little 60-second segments. And I don't know how to get people back to recognizing the work of art, and also bodies of work, especially when you've been in the game for a while. You start to accumulate albums, and you're like, we have an entire discography, not just that one song you heard on that playlist. So I imagine that must be frustrating creatively, to keep running into this wall of commodity when you're also just making art. Hayley, do you find that as well? Dealing with, like, art and commodity and people not recognizing the work of making your music and the film and television work that you do.
Yeah, I think the struggle that I find is that, like, what brings me joy and what brings me peace is writing music and sharing it. But now there's like 8 other ways to share it. And so all of a sudden you start as just an artist who's creating and having this incredible relationship with a fan, and then all of a sudden you're taking on these 10 other roles. You're doing a TikTok, you're doing this, you're doing business management, you're doing marketing, have I posted today? What am I sharing with everyone? Have I shared all my deepest, darkest secrets? What do I need to share tomorrow? And then you get it's so distracting that you don't get to do what you really love to do, which is create and write the music and go in it and direct to video and, like, have it be what you're saying. And it's become a whole other job. And for me, that's been the hardest transition, is to kind of navigate that and really make sure I have enough space and fuel to create, because all of a sudden now I have this empire of marketing that I have to run every single day. And, like, that's, I love connecting with my fans, and it worked connecting the other way. And it's like, now we have all these other responsibilities, and it takes away from the art. And so I think that there's a lot of things going on that's distracting from the art. And I think that also adds another layer of pressure as an artist, where you're not doing enough because the art is not enough.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean? And who am I? And then all of a sudden you start to kind of spiral, to be honest. And I'm sure a lot of people went through that during the pandemic, and again, touring is the only way, our source of income. To not have that one, human connection, and you're relying on all your new 10 other jobs that you have to do when you really just want to go write an album.
Right.
And
all those other jobs don't pay.
No, they do not. They do not. They do not.
So our time is running out, but I would like to ask two last questions, and you can each answer them together. What's next for you creatively? What are you working on? And then a question I love to ask all creative people: what do you like most? What do you love most about what you do and how you do it?
You go,
Noelle,
Hayley.
you.
Oh, you want me? Okay. I'm down, whatever. I mean, a few things, obviously, Diversify the Stage is incredibly important to me. And, the next real phase of this journey is, we have an ongoing apprenticeship program that is really introducing, college age humans about the behind the scenes careers and roles, right? And how to get your footing in that space and creating opportunities that are equitable, really getting them into the pipeline. But also really sharing the work of Diversify the Stage to other artists. So, folks like Hayley to really advocate for these changes to really happen on a larger scale, to create more of the demand for this to happen in all of our productions. That's really the next phase for Diversify the Stage. And then I'm also, we're writing our next record for Fitz and the Tantrums. I'm back in the studio with Fitz and working on projects and basically going from my like business brain to creative brain on a daily basis. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. The end of the week, it's all creative. And the first half of the week, I'm founder of the organization and I'm trying to like navigate the corporate world, so that's my reality right now. What I really enjoy, on your second question, really enjoy about being a creative in general. Is that the general question? So I can go back.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. If I stopped writing and recording records, I don't think I could ever stop performing.
Mm-hmm.
The performance part of it has always been a huge part of my life from the time I was 10 years old up until, where I am now in my 40s, and I don't think that that'll ever change. Like I'll always be performing, doing something on a stage. I love hosting events. I love meeting other artists and talking to them about their talent and their gifts and things like that. So I think for me, the performance part is so ingrained in me, really, because I get to be 1,000% Skaggs.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get on that stage, my entire personality, you see it. It's not, I love to have fun. I love to dance. I love to get the crowd involved. I love getting people hyped, taking them out of their like daily worries and bringing joy. Like that is who I am from the soles of my feet to the top of my crown, and that's my favorite part of being an artist, is that really performing in a live setting.
Mm-hmm. Hayley, what about you? What's next for you? And what do you like most about how you do your work and what you do?
I'm releasing a new album this year. So I'm very excited. Yeah, I've just been staring at it for multiple years and now I'm excited to share it with everyone. So I'm really excited about that. And we're working on the visual and just kind of the plan for that. And I think for me, it's kind of the same. I mean, I love writing music. I think that process of having this feeling and being able to heal from that feeling, or even to not heal, but to be able to kind of like work through, is just like such an incredible gift and power. And so I love writing music and performing. I think, like Noelle said, it's like to be able to share this moment on stage with someone and to let go of our worries and let go of what we're going to have to deal with tomorrow, and just to be present is like it's the best feeling in the world. And so I love that part, and I love storytelling. I mean, I love directing, and I think what I've learned through my journey and continue to learn is the core of what I love is storytelling, whether it's writing, directing, is creating a safe space for people. Mm-hmm. And I think that that'll always be a huge part of like my passion.
Very cool. Well, Hayley Kiyoko, Noelle Scaggs, this has been a great conversation, and I've really enjoyed talking to you this afternoon. So thank you for joining me in this conversation.
Thank you.
Roxane, thank
Really
you.
enjoyed. You both
Thank
are
you for your.
incredible.
Thank you.
You too. You too. Thank you, Hayley. I would love to connect with you outside of this, and we have a lot in common, and I really would love to like get to know you more. And see what we can do within in DTS and just period. And Roxane, thank you so much for a lovely discussion. Your questions are incredible, and I really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you very much.
Always so thoughtful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And it's been great getting to know both of you and the work that you do.
Thank you.
Family, wow. What a rich conversation that was. I cannot thank Hayley, Noelle, and Dr. Gay enough for being here with us and sharing so much of themselves. Now, as an industry, we have work to do to be more equitable and to create a more inclusive place. We all have a role to play, family, especially cis men, in addressing the tremendous bias, discrimination, harassment, and inequitable opportunity that women and non-binary folks face in the music industry and in our communities. And as you heard from our artists today, how they highlighted the barriers to entering, persisting, succeeding in the industry as a woman are especially heightened if you are trans, disabled, queer, of color, from outside the US or UK, poor, or otherwise marginalized. So as we're working to change the systems, conditions, and behaviors that perpetuate gender inequality, we must also work to dismantle homophobia, racism, xenophobia, transphobia, and all other forms of oppression. So family, again, thank you for tuning in to this incredible conversation, for continuing to advance diversity and inclusion at WMG and in your communities. And don't forget to keep up to date on our education programs and offerings by visiting our DEI Institute at deiinstitute.wmg.com. And as I always say, we're in this together.